you all so much for coming here tonight. You are incredibly fabulous creatures, each and every one of you, and it's just great to have you all. So, this being a Unitarian Universalist church, we always start our meetings, our community things with the lighting of the chalice.
Boys.
Boys, all right.
Thank you.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check.
Thank you for coming to First Unitarian Church of Providence.
Thank you for coming to First Unitarian Church of Providence.
We will now light the chalice.
We will now light the chalice.
And the Reverend James Ford will now give a welcoming message to you. Mike off.
Hi, everybody. I'm James, and as John said, I have the amazing privilege of serving among the good people of the First Unitarian Church of Providence. And on behalf of that community, welcome. As John also said, it's our tradition at the beginning of our events to kindle a flame that's contained in a vessel, and we call it a chalice. We're probably the only religious community where children think chalices are something that you have fires in. For us, the symbolism is important, and possibly it's relevant to us in our gathering this evening. The flame itself stands, among many other things, for our individuality, each of us as a person, with inherent worth, dignity, the value of the individual, and yet we find that individual comes to fruition, to fulfillment, often only within relationship, within community. For us, the chalice that's holding that flame. We try to keep that lit as we go through our meetings, allowing us to recall those two things, that mysterious blending of individual and community, and how, when they're brought into right relationship, something powerful can emerge. Love can inspire us. Justice can become our word. It's my job to preach, but not tonight. So, again, welcome. Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, does everybody have an agenda? Yes, everybody need one? Okay. We are going to, Patricia is going to be the facilitator of this meeting, so please come over here. And I will be helping out. I'll be taking stack when we get into the Q&A periods. We will like to begin the evening by having some of the people who are actually in Burnside Park, sleeping there day in and day out, just tell us very briefly about what their life is like there and where they think we're going. And after that, we will be talking about some of our campaigns. That's going to be happening, at which point there will be some more questions. And we are also going to then break out into groups. If you hear about a campaign that you particularly are interested in, please go and talk to those people. We'll be sharing contact information, which you presumably all... Is there anybody here who didn't sign in? No? Okay, great. Okay, okay, so with that, we can kindly begin with Alice. Okay, actually, okay.
Sit down again.
Okay, yeah. Okay, particularly for the benefit of people from First Unitarian Church, we're going to be doing this Occupy Providence style, and you're going to be talking about how we run those kind of meetings here. Patricia.
We already said that we would probably tell each other if we got off the track, so this has been one time. John,
Okay.
no doubt, will tell you later on that
Okay.
we screwed up something. So, this is not your normal GA. At a General Assembly, generally we share information, and we also come to decisions. So it has two purposes. Tonight is more of an information sharing meeting than it is a decision-making meeting. But nevertheless, we wanted to go over some of the procedures that we use in GAs and perhaps use them in a modified fashion tonight. Several people here have worked as facilitators at Occupy Providence. We try not to have the same people do it all the time, although we've had some people do it more often than we would like, as we have run out of facilitators. But people are going to listen and they're going to know a lot of this if they're already with Occupy Providence. Is there anyone who never went to a General Assembly at Occupy Providence? Okay, so this is mainly kind of for you. We usually start with finding out if there are new sort of members in the group. If this were a smaller group, we would probably ask you to introduce yourselves. We would also tell you that we welcome you to day number, and I'm not too sure what day we're up to. We no longer talk about the day that we've been in the park, but we can still talk about how many days it has been since we held our first General Assembly on October 1st. But I have a feeling we've now lost the number. 120 something. As we said all along, you don't have to, you didn't have to camp out in the park in order to be part of Occupy Providence. Many people, including myself, never did. The ground looked too hard, there were no bathrooms nearby. It just was not something I was interested in. Many people, however, sitting in this room, were there for pretty much the entire occupation. And that really took an inordinate amount of willpower, I'd like to think, on their part. We usually start with exciting or major news from other occupies, sort of a gesture of solidarity to them. We'll skip that for tonight. But basically, just in terms of what we try to do in a General Assembly, we try to make sure, again, that we're making decisions, we're sharing information in what is a safe space. We certainly are totally opposed to any violence or destructive behavior or tactics. So if you usually do this here, we'd appreciate it if you would refrain from it tonight. Discrimination based on race, sex, gender, orientation, ableism, religion, legal status, or age is not welcome. And we are, by majority vote, a drug and alcohol-free assembly and occupation. And cigarette smokers, we usually say, should get a respectful distance away from others, but since we're inside, as you know, we should really be further away. Instead of applauding or booing people, which can slow down the decision-making process and make it hard for people to hear, as you probably know, Occupy Providence and other occupations use a series of hand signals. So if you agree with something that's being said, you go like this. If you disagree, you go like this. If you really aren't too sure, you go like this. If you want to ask a clarifying question, and quite frequently as people are giving reports or as people are presenting proposals, they have questions about, well, what do you really mean there? You go like this. If someone can help out with information and make a point of information, they go like this. If we're getting way off track and you want to help the facilitator out because we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, you do a point of process. And then if people are droning on and on and on and on, and they make the same point over and over again, this. When we get to the
I'm sure God, we don't do that.
When we get into long discussions and we're taking stack, and in this case, John is going to take stack tonight as questions are coming up. If people have not had a chance to speak and others have talked a lot, you may go like this, which is progressive stack, showing that you've been sort of marginalized in the conversation. And quite frequently, people who perhaps belong to a group that's frequently marginalized in society at large may also use that from time to time if they feel, again, they're being marginalized here. So the next part we usually do is to go over the agenda, which John already has done. And so now we're right on into the part where Allie is waiting patiently. She has 4 minutes, and 3 minutes she's going to be getting a sign that she needs to stop in a minute.
Everyone can start doing this.
We're going to get off the stage in 4 minutes.
Hi everyone, I'm Allie. I'm really happy to be here and to be meeting so many wonderful people. I just got to meet so many great people downstairs who are doing awesome things in the community, and I'm really happy to have this space for us all to get together and talk. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with Occupy Providence. But first I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. So some background. I'm a psychology major in school, and I went into social services. I've been really involved with volunteering in social services for many years in my life, which is great, but also at the same time has left me feeling a little bit unfulfilled at times, feeling like kind of plugging leaks, but not really solving major issues. And I've been dealing with, I've been faced with major issues since I was a very young age. I was raised by a single mom. I knew what debt was probably when I was 7 or 8, and felt the burden of debt from that young age, and never really understood what it was all about until more recently. I've been an activist for many years, but again, has felt like kind of just patching holes here and there, putting band-aids on things. And this past summer, I went to a conference out in St. Louis, Missouri, and we took action against some of the largest corporations. Did an action against Bank of America and also one against Monsanto, which sounds really great, but it was my first time taking direct action and my first time really bumping up against power structures. I ran into police, hundreds of police coming out to defend Bank of America instead of to defend the protesters outside of Bank of America who were standing up for even millions more people who were suffering at the hands of Bank of America. And same thing at Monsanto. Being an activist outside Monsanto, the police were there to protect Monsanto, but not to protect everyday people. So that left me feeling really frustrated and really angry. And further icing on the cake, but just over a year ago, my parents had their home foreclosed on them, and that was my family home, so that hurt really bad and left me feeling very angry. It was due to Bank of America, my friend Bank of America. So I had all this pent-up anger about, like, how is this possible? How can this be happening? How come the police are defending these corporations when they're doing these horrible things? And I know that my family is not, by far, not the only family being affected by foreclosures and having their lives destroyed by Bank of America. But it still left me feeling really angry. And then September came around, and I heard about Occupy Wall Street, and I was like, that's silly, you know. They're going to go out to Wall Street, and they're going to get cleaned up by the police in 2 seconds, and it will be over. And then I watched the news, and they got cleared out by the police, and then they came back. And they got cleared out by the police, and then they came back, and they kept coming back. And I was like, wow, there's something really cool going on here, something different. And then Occupy Providence was starting up, and I was like, I got to go out there and check it out. It's happening right down the street. I got to go out there. And I went down there and had this amazing spark of energy, of excitement, because here I was for the first time surrounded by other people that were suffering too, and talking to them and hearing each other out and looking each other in the eye, and being able to share those frustrations and angers, and being around people who wanted to do something about it. And it was just this amazing sense of community that just sprung up out of nowhere in a public park. And it was so beautiful and really exciting to be able to connect with people. And after that first night I went down there, I had to keep going back. And every time I did, I met more people and got to hear their stories and share my story and connect with each other in a way that doesn't happen in everyday life. And to talk to people that I would never in my wildest dreams have talked to except for in this scenario. People of all ages, people of all backgrounds. It was just the most beautiful, spontaneous community that just sprung up in the middle of the city. Thank you. So basically, I think that's the most beautiful part about Occupy Providence. I did start camping down there, staying in tent with my sister. and stayed down there for the first month. We were there pretty much every night, still holding down jobs and trying to live our lives, but being in the park. And then it got a bit colder, and I'll be perfectly honest about it, the occupation was not without flaws too. It had its flaws. I'm a member of the Women Transgender Queer Caucus of Occupy Providence, and we formed out of oppression that was happening in the park. There is oppression down there, and there was oppression down there, I should say, because we don't just leave all that at the door when we come in to a movement. But it's still so important for us to be out there and to be talking about these things and dealing with these forms of oppression as they happen in the park. And the caucus was really helpful in dealing with all of that, because working together to build a movement, we're going to be interfacing with people of all different experiences and backgrounds, bringing different things to the table. So to me, these conversations and this kind of messiness that comes with it is all part of the greater struggle. And I hope to see more of that happening. I know right now we don't have physical occupation, but I'm really excited about things that are on the horizon. Just to name a few, I'm part of the Design Our Homes campaign, starting up and you'll be hearing more about. Also part of the Solidarity Economy campaign, and also part of organizing for May Day. So if anyone here is interested in any of those things, please feel free to come talk to me, or there will be time, I know, after when we break out into more specific working groups where we can talk about these things. Yeah, in 5 minutes, that's my story of Occupy Providence. It's my experience, and thank you for listening.
Our Randall Rose.
Hi, I'm Randall, and I also have not been occupying in the park as much as some people did. I was there one night a week, always borrowing people's tents. One of the nice things about Occupy is everybody is so free with what they have. It's easy to find somebody to let you share their tents. In fact, I can look around and see people who let me share their tents there. So I felt like I couldn't use the sleeping there overnight most nights in the week, because we were constantly feeling there was a danger that the police might come in the middle of the night, which is when they like to come in most cities and throw us out without much warning. And for a while, Mayor Ferris was talking about doing that, and I was worried because I had a job and I have to leave very early in the morning. So if they arrested me, I wouldn't be out in time to get to my job, and I might lose my job. So I was worried about that. So I did not. So I actually ended up staying only one night a week, but and probably I could have stayed more. I mean, one thing about being in the park and one thing about being in Occupy Providence is you always feel that you could be doing more. And yeah, I mean, even the people who were doing most felt like they should be doing more. But it was a great feeling. Because even though you felt like you weren't doing enough, you felt like you were also doing a lot and involved in some really great things, and that was why it felt like you should be doing more. I felt like one thing about Occupy is a little bit unusual, because a lot of people cover Occupy as a kind of protest, and they think it's the media thinks it's just a lot of protesters. Some people apparently think that it's just a bunch of spoiled rich students from Brown University, which is not quite true. But in fact, we have in Occupy all ages, all walks of life, people from every different kind of background you can imagine. But it's not just a protest. It's even more than that. Occupy is a demonstration. A demonstration in maybe the best sense of the word, because what it does is it's trying to show how people can work together and listen to each other and try to take steps towards a better kind of society, knowing that we don't all agree with each other about what a better kind of society is. And in comparison to other groups I've been involved in, Occupy is often way more open-minded. Not always, definitely not always, but often way more open-minded, way more open to people from different points of view. And it also works really hard to make sure that it doesn't develop a power structure of itself. We do try to make sure that there's nobody who has any official position within Occupy, and there are people with informal power. I mean, I know I have some informal power from Occupy, other people do. There are people who spend more time doing things and become more influential than others, but we do try to balance it out. We do try to make sure that the people who haven't been heard as much do get a chance to speak up, and we constantly have this back and forth, this effort to make sure that if you're male and you can enjoy the privileges that our habits give to people who are male, then we try to make sure there's some way to balance that out. We try to make an extra effort to make sure women aren't being interrupted all the time, which is a big learning thing for a lot of us, and there's certainly for me, and it is for in a lot of different ways too. Is we have become aware of class issues, and encampment with a lot of people who've been homeless and a lot of people who've never worked with homeless people before. So we do try to balance that out, and a lot of people I know have really grown a lot as people here. I've seen other people grow a lot, and I feel like I've learned a lot too. The other thing is we try to transcend the difference between evolution and revolution as strategies. Some people think that the way to make social change is through evolution, through trying to work within the power system and influence elections and lobby officials and things like that. Some people think you only get real change through revolution. Both of those approaches, I think, have plenty of flaws. It's hard to make really substantial change working within the system. It's more likely you're going to get co-opted. If you try to do a revolution, even if you succeed, and that's by no means certain, but even if you succeed in making a revolution, I think there have been good revolutions, but a lot of revolutions end up going really bad, and I think in the present state of society, I don't think if we overthrew the current system, we'd get into something much worse. So one thing I really like about Occupy is it tries to build up a democratic alternative working outside the power system. It tries to get people used to working in a way that's really considerate and fair and listening to each other, and it tries to demonstrate that kind of way of working together, even though we don't have power yet. We don't try to directly take power in any way, but we try to build up the habit of doing that. We try to bring as many as possible of the 99% in to listen to them and to make sure they get to learn how to work together. And we think that way, once we get the experience working democratically like that, after years of doing that, we may get to the point where we can make real evolutionary change that doesn't get co-opted, or where if you think a revolution is necessary, where we have a chance of a revolution that doesn't get corrupted. And I think Occupy is the most promising way of doing it.
If Occupy was there for 120 days, Jared Hall was probably there for 119, or close. So, take it away, Jared.
Mic check! I've been on the road. For a good amount. Over the past 2 weeks. It's so good to be home. With my Occupy family. Hallelujah! Mic off. So my name is Jared, and I'm a resident here in Providence. I've lived in Rhode Island my whole life. I'm an artist in residence at AS220. I'm a writer. I've been involved in direct action here in Providence probably for the past 15 years or so. I went to my first poetry reading at the University of Rhode Island during my freshman year of college there. And at that first poetry reading, University of Rhode Island Students for Social Change presented a demonstration in a video on factory farming and what factory farming was. And I couldn't believe what I saw. The destruction of the earth, treatment of the animals, waste of the water. And I had a very large anxiety attack. I couldn't believe that something this awful could be happening all over my country and all over the world. And I was 19 years old and I hadn't even heard about it. And I love my mother, we're very close. There's no way that my mother could know about this. She would have told me. There's no way my mother would be serving us food or giving our money to this, etc., etc. And I instead of having a nervous breakdown, I pretty much had a nervous awakening. The factory farm industrial agricorp construct led me to studying the prison construct, the industrial military construct, and one after another, like dominoes falling, all these problems in the world, they were all being perpetrated by the same folks. I didn't have the term for the 1% yet locked in my head, but pretty much when Occupy hit, I realized that I had been waiting for a movement like this for the past, 15 years. It seemed to me that there were so many things that were that wrong, and I couldn't understand. I grew up believing that I grew up pretty poor, as poor as anybody that I've known, but I was lucky enough to have parents who loved me and cared for me, and generally grew up believing that folks were good people and wanted to make a difference and make sure the world was running right. And when I started finding out about all these things, I couldn't understand why there wasn't more of an organized mass movement working on solving these problems. And so the past 15 years until Occupy, it's been a journey. I think as many folks thought, organizing against the Iraq War and against the Afghanistan war, we thought we were going to be able to stop that. Many of us did. And then many of us thought that we were going to be able to stop Bush from winning the second time. And when there were issues about the election and the equality and the fairness of the elections the second time around, many of us thought that people would be in the street then. I thought that there was going to be a mass movement then. Katrina. Shortly after Katrina, the horrors and the inequality and the complicity of the government and the lack of the resources, surely there would be a mass movement after Katrina. But it didn't happen. Shortly after the bailouts, after the wealthiest of the wealthy, basically crashed our economy into the ground, lost people's pensions, homes, and livelihood. Shortly after that, but it didn't happen. There was this transition to a Democratic president, and everybody wanted, just was swept up in the moments or chose to be hands off for whatever reason. Myself, shortly after the BP spill happened, after this very irresponsible billion-dollar corporation, didn't do the due diligence, and a deep-sea mine shaft spilled open and basically let forth a geyser of oil polluting the whole Gulf for months. Surely people would get in the street, finally, and raise hell or shut things down until we got accountability and an answer. And it kind of occurred to me along the way, if I'm this radical writer or this radical organizer, and I'm not one of the people who's in the street blocking up the doorway or really agitating for some change more than being behind my computer screen or going to an anti-war rally once a month or every couple months, then who would be? And I don't know, perhaps it's a bad analogy to think of who's going to throw the first punch or whatever, but surely I had thought that there would be, as many of us did, that there would be some sort of mass movement. But what I've learned through Occupy is that, you don't get to say when it comes. You don't get to call or craft exactly what it looks like when enough people get upset enough to actually act, to actually throw their hands up in the air and say, enough is enough, and we don't even have to have the answer, we just have to do something. And that's what happened. I've been arrested for peaceful civil disobedience at different actions around the country leading up to this, and I had thought that maybe my place would be at Occupy Wall Street. I went to the first Occupy Providence General Assembly here on October 1st, and went to OWS on the 11th and the 12th, and when I got there, it was very obvious to me that they didn't need anybody else there. They had thousands and thousands of folks. And then watching the way the General Assembly is built here in Providence, you would never know that it was a tiny city. People came day after day, and we had anywhere from 50 to 100 people there. And then when we moved in on October 15th, who knows, 1,500, 2,000 people strong, and it got bigger and bigger. And so I've had the opportunity now through my shows, traveling over the past few weeks, and a tour that I canceled over the fall, but still had to maintain the contractual shows that were already booked. I visited about, somewhere between 15 to 20 other occupations. I know from going to occupytogether.org that there at one point were 1,700 different registered occupations around the country and around the world. And I am happy to report that although, as it has been expressed here, there are all kinds of issues with Occupy, inclusivity, oppression within the movements, lack of accountability. But I am happy to report that even though there are all these issues, that's what, working class, it's a working class movement, it's horizontal, and folks are not only working to address these things, but that, the movement is growing. And I can report, after having been to 15 or 20, hands-on, Tacoma, Portland, Seattle, Iowa, Detroit, folks are really learning from the mistakes that they've made, or attempting to learn from the mistakes that they've made. It's not going to get smaller in 2012, it's going to get bigger. Folks are already planning on better ways to do it. And, it's our intention for the 2010s to make the 60s look like training wheels. Thank you very much.
Bob Cox would like to make an announcement.
Welcome, everybody. I'm a member of the First Unitarian Church, and we have an active social justice community, and this event tonight is part of that. On March the 18th, we would hope the members of our church will go to the Westminster Church in East Greenwich for our annual legislative ministry meeting. We try to keep an eye on the General Assembly, what goes on there, and how we can talk and, if necessary, argue with our elected officials about conditions that will make this a better world. And we congratulate those of you who are out on the street and trying to do the same thing.
Washington General Assembly is a very job, but somebody's got to do it. Okay. At this point, I'd like to throw the floor open to people, particularly from First Unitarian Church, who may have questions and want to talk and engage people in dialogue. Okay, yeah, we got to do this one, yeah.
Okay. John is going to take stack.
So,
Anybody would like to speak?
anybody wish to introduce?
Any questions you would like to ask?
Does the movement intend to occupy Burnside Park once it gets warm again?
Someone from the panelists want to answer this question?
Go, Jared.
There's not a particular plan in place, but direct democracy in the way this movement moves. If the movement at the time feels like that's the best move, I mean, we could go anywhere. There's folks from Occupy Providence fighting a foreclosure right now, the House of Compassion in Cumberland. If the energy is there and the will is there, it is total possibility that Occupy Providence could reoccupy the People's Park, could occupy the State House lawn, could occupy the Attorney General's office, could occupy anywhere folks choose to occupy. But I believe that there will be, in my own personal belief, is that there will be another occupation either in the spring or in the summer for sure. And that's my personal belief, not,
There is some talk about doing many occupations throughout the state. We're calling on ourselves the possibility of the Village Green Democratic Society going to various parts of the state, setting up encampments, talking to people, and what have you.
I just wondered if we could hear more about, Jared, right?
Yep.
Was saying about the foreclosure, protesting foreclosures we were talking about.
We can cover that, actually, take back that one.
Are you talking about the House of Compassion that he just
Yeah.
went to? Yeah, there's a House of Compassion in Cumberland. It's a kind of group home dealing with mental hospice care, yeah. And they're facing foreclosure because of loss of funding. So right now there are some members of Occupy Providence out there helping to draw attention to it and to help fundraise and just be there to support the House of Compassion. They under their own
Say something. You know, and to be clear, I mean, that was an instance where folks called out for Occupy Providence in particular. And this is a non-institutionalized hospice residence where folks are living and surviving through multiple different, serious ailments, and they're, they own their residence and they're able to live there with dignity and govern themselves and make their own rules. And now they're being foreclosed upon over, a couple $1,000 sewage bill. There's multiple other issues involved, but they were, looking for assistance, and they were not getting the attention that they felt that they deserved, or they wanted they believed that if they got the word out there to more people, that they would get more help. And they reached out, and we were able to use some of the political capital that we have, and folks from Occupy Providence are willing to go down there and actually help run the house and fight the foreclosure with an actual occupation.
Luther?
I'm so sorry. I know I'm not part of the church. I know you guys want to ask questions and stuff like that. I think one main question you guys are thinking about is how can I help the Occupy movement? And it's, you can do another ways, a lot of ways to do help out the Occupy movement. You don't have to just go in and pin $10 on Burnside Park, because you guys got jobs and lives and stuff like that. But you can do little things, like you have someone's back. And having someone's back is very, very important, especially with the 99%, the working class people and stuff like that. One great person that does it consistently and wonderfully and stuff like that is a man called John Prince. Now, John Prince works for Direct Action for Rights Equality and Providence. He's this African-American male who has been through a lot and has been through a lot of experience and stuff like that. I would like to say he's also almost like a mentor and stuff like that. When I worked at Daley, I was a little bit hot-headed and stuff like that, whatever. And stuff like that. He says, Luther, come down, everything's going to be okay. And he would come up, and if someone ever went to jail or someone ever had to go to the hospital or anything like that, he would be there for them. And people would never say a bad word about John Prince, because he was the kind of person to have your back and stuff like that. And you don't have to be that consistent and stuff like that, or have to be that dedicated, but you can start off small. And stuff like that. If you want, sometimes when you see something happen down the street or something, just keep an eye on something or something. Sometimes I mess with myself, because I'll be walking down Onlyville, listening to my iPod, getting down with the P-Funk, and it's like just gets this I see something happen and I feel frustrated and stuff like that. What should I do and stuff like that? I mean, we live in a society that depends on basically the government. Basically on the cops, the politicians and stuff like that. But we don't take ownership not only on our own lives, but on our communities and stuff like that. No matter be rich or poor, black or white, or any other nationality or ethnic group and stuff. I mean, I think if you ask that question, what can I do for Occupy? I think that's to start out and stuff like that, is to have someone's back.
Thank you.
And as John Prince is one of my favorite human beings on the face of the planet. Okay. Question in the back.
How do you, now that you're not occupying with, but how do you communicate with each other and how do you get your message out to the general public of, what's happening?
Social media smoke sex.
Randall.
Okay, we have a bunch of ways of doing it. First of all, the authorities did manage to force us out of the park. They made it pretty clear that they were going to throw us out, and we decided to make our own deal and actually make it win something for 99%. So we're not in the park anymore. Doesn't mean we've stopped having public meetings. We still have our public general assemblies twice a week, and we post the times and locations on our website, and anybody is welcome to come. Sometimes we do actually meet in the park. Sometimes we meet in libraries or in other places, but we do have these public general assemblies, and that's where we make our decisions, because one of the core things about us is we want to have our meetings be places where anybody can come and take part in the democratic process. Sorry?
What is the website?
The website is occupyprovidence.com. Okay. We're also on all the social media, on Facebook and live stream and Twitter and several others. So yeah, so we have all these ways of communicating. We also have an email list that we use to discuss things. And one of the things where we really made progress is learning to be considerate of each other on the email list and not just using it as a way to take out our aggression. So we've really made progress in that, thanks to Patricia's efforts and other people's. So yes, the other thing is that we also are publishing a newspaper. There are copies of the newspaper over there. Our first issue, Occupy Providence Journal, first came out. Please take a copy. We're pretty proud of it, although there's a lot of things we could improve about it. But we are going to keep publishing it if enough money comes in to do that. So we do things that way. But as far as how we get the word out, which was part of your question in the beginning, the main way it's not so much about getting the word out to help Occupy Providence, because at least I'm just speaking for myself, but I think other people in Occupy Providence feel this way. I don't want Occupy Providence to be devoting its effort to helping motivate other people to help itself. We're not about helping motivate people to help Occupy, or to help argue. We're about helping to motivate people to help the 99%. And what we try to get the word out for is for people to help take part in actions and campaigns and things like that that will actually help the 99% and make a fairer power structure in this society and make it possible for everybody to participate in choosing the direction of social change. And for that, I'm just going to say that we really would appreciate if you pass on our announcements about actions to take part in protests and campaigns and things like that. And we would, and if you can come out and help support these actions, that's one of the best ways to get the word out. But people do care, and there's momentum behind it. The more you participate as individuals, the more momentum there is behind. That's all.
Thank you.
Take one more question.
I'm just curious, how do you mentioned that when a place is being foreclosed, you went there. How do you plan to prevent a foreclosure happening? What's the process?
We're going to get to that in the next part.
Actually,
that's one of our campaigns.
Actually, that's a good place to transition. Okay. All right. You asked.
We'll get to you when we do the next Q&A.
Okay. We're not going to talk about the campaigns, and since somebody asked about foreclosures, I'm going to come back up here. And we're going to talk, we're going to have to move this along pretty quickly, so we're going to talk about the individual campaigns for about 4 minutes. At the end of that, we'll have another Q&A period, and then maybe we'll get a chance to shut it. Okay.
We have several working groups that have gotten together, and over the course of a number of meetings have come up with what we feel are the issues that we most want to work on kind of immediately, and not just one-off action, but something that would build and continue. And we ended up with 5 of these campaigns that have been approved by the General Assembly. Others may follow, but these are the ones that we're really focusing on now.
Others will follow.
Okay.
But these are the ones we have to be particularly passionate about right now.
Okay. All right. We've, Allie and I worked on, along with some other people, Jacob and some other people, we Occupy Wall Street, as you know, happened because of the basically financial crisis, and there's a focus against Wall Street, particularly Wall Street's manipulation of the home mortgage market. I'm a title examiner of 20 years, and during the worst years of the housing boom, I was the senior title examiner of a law firm that closed deals for one of the most notorious subprime lenders. So you're looking at a person who is an unindictable accomplice to a thing that almost brought down the world economy, and I saw it on a daily basis. It's probably frustrating to me. And I knew also at the same time that they were also destroying the land recordation system with the way that they were securitizing their mortgages and the way they were concealing the ownership of who owned the notes and all the rest of it. So it does not surprise me that they, when they are foreclosing on their homes, a fairly high percentage of the cases are illegal. They do not have record possession of the mortgage. And this has been coming out in dribs and drabs of lawsuits and all the rest of the things. There's been forensic studies and what have you, so we have decided to basically use foreclosure fraud and opposing foreclosures as a vehicle to establish housing as a right, and with that, Allie's going to tell you how we're going to go about doing it.
Okay, so our campaign actually already started. Our first action was to try to pressure Attorney General Bill Martin to not sign on to the nationwide settlement against the banks, or with the banks. The 5 largest banking and mortgage lenders in the country basically wanted to settle for a large price tag, and we wanted to pressure Attorney General Bill Martin to withdraw with Rhode Island from that agreement, from that settlement, so that these banks can be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Unfortunately, Attorney General Bill Martin did not listen to us, did not listen to the public, and signed on to the settlement, but it's not too late. We're going to keep putting pressure on prosecuting these banks. But our campaign will take a couple of phases. Our first phase will be connecting with other organizations, doing the work of helping protect people and educate them about housing rights. Thank you. And reaching out to the general public to educate them about these housing issues and about what's going on and the economic crisis that was caused by all these subprime loans and predatory lending. And then we're going to move to more direct action regarding stopping evictions, examining which approaching foreclosures are possibly illegal, and then going to those homes to literally protect them from eviction. So how that might look is a whole bunch of people in the community coming out and having kind of a block party or just a giant protest of some sort to physically prevent the eviction from happening. And cities across the country are already doing this very successfully. In Boston, they're doing it. In New York, they've been successful doing it. So we know we can have some successes doing this as well. And then ultimately, our ultimate goal for the future is to take properties that have already been foreclosed, that are vacant, and getting people back into those homes. And that could take a bunch of different forms, but that's our ultimate goal, is to get people back into homes and to open up these spaces to the general public once again, because they are ours and the banks have no right to take them from us. And yeah, housing is a human right and everyone should have the opportunity to be housed.
All right. And now, we talk about tax justice.
I think it will come as no surprise that an organization whose motto is something like, we are the 99%, or protecting the 99% against the 1%, have as a goal to reverse the process by which more and more of the wealth has been concentrated in the hands of fewer and fewer people, and the large majority of people, the 99%, effectively have less and less of the wealth. One of the main tools by which the 1% has managed to concentrate the wealth in their own hands has been through tax policies over the last 30 to 50 years, which have seen progressively the lower and lower marginal tax rate in the income taxes for the wealthy, and a growing dependence on the property tax. Here in Rhode Island is a very severe case of that, whereby the least progressive tax, the most regressive tax, is the one that is growing at the fastest rate and causing enormous lack of solidarity within the 99%. That is, most of the resentment and most of the hatred seems to be between, let's say, the people between 60 and 99 percentile, and the people below that, because the people who have the big houses and are paying for school and no longer have children in school resent and hate the people who they say, require these services. Another factor that has gone into this inequality is the whole idea of unfunded mandates, whereby when the rich got the federal government to stop paying for things, they passed the buck down to the states. When the states heard the complaints of their income taxpayers and started to reduce the tax rates, then they passed the mandates down to the towns, and the towns are left carrying the bag through property taxes for the services that are required by the government, like the government No Child Left Behind, but which have to be paid for by the local people with a regressive tax. So just to contextualize, I think it's kind of interesting that in the meetings that Pat referred to, where for 2 or 3 months people from the direct action, the political action, and the visioning working groups met, we had a list on the board of some 25 big issues that had been suggested by these groups. We devised a list of 22 criteria by which we would judge how important those issues were, and we ended up grouping into, obviously we could apply 22 criteria to 25 issues, or we would have been never finished with this cluster analysis. What we did was to determine about 4 or 5 main areas. Homelessness and housing rights were one of those. Just by itself, it was an area. Then there was a whole cluster of issues that we put together under the title Democratic Economics. It was basically trying to reduce that gap between the 99 and the 1%. And eventually that group broke down into the 3 groups, the one I'm talking about and the one the next 2 people will be talking about: tax justice, a solidarity economy, and gendered economic inequality. So we started out the meeting. It was just Randall and myself and Tom first. We've been joined by Jennifer, and we have a labor representative coming tomorrow. So this is a very new campaign. It's only been functioning for a week or so. The first thing we decided to do was that we would be attending budget hearings in Rhode Island with an ultimate goal of trying to restore the marginal tax rate of 1993, which was 5% higher than this year's taxes will be. The rich will be paying only 4.9% on their highest layer of earnings, and they used to pay 9.9%. So we're working on that. Trade unions started asking for 1. A local Providence councilor, Harold Metz, asked for 3. A woman representative this week has asked for 4. And we're hoping for 5, okay? And the other thing we did was we were asked by ACT UP, an organization that works with gay and HIV and AIDS issues, to work on a protest against Joe Biden. So last night you may have seen on your television set that Occupy and ACT UP were out in full force picketing until he finally arrived. And the idea is that we want Joe Biden to stop running around the world lobbying against, pressuring, threatening other countries that want to institute this speculators tax. It was once widely known as the Tobin tax. It's a tax that is tiny, 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 but especially for speculators who speculate a lot in the market, make a lot of purchases and sell very, very, very rapidly, contributing to the volatility in the market. So anyway, we get out there to tell him to stop doing that, to let the other countries and follow them in establishing this tax. Those are our 2 big issues at the moment. We're meeting tomorrow at 2:45 within the General Assembly meeting. And any of you are welcome then. We're thinking of setting our meetings mostly on Monday or Tuesday afternoons. Anyone is welcome. Get out there and fight this movement to concentrate through a clever tax policy and cleverly pitting in the 99%, the 44.5 against the other 40. 9, I guess it is. 45.
Randall Rose will now talk about the solidarity economy.
Well, the first thing I want to say about the solidarity economy is people think of this as a dream for the future, an economy that's based on solidarity. But I want to say the solidarity economy is not something new. In fact, it's what Jared was talking about before. Jared was saying when he grew up, he was used to people helping each other out. People have been doing that for ages and ages. It's not something new. There have always been people who feel a sense of economic responsibility to their community, who aren't just out to get money for themselves. That's always happened, and we need more of it. It really is what's going to save the society and what is going to save the world. So we need more of it. It needs to be nurtured some more. And yeah, we did have, you know, the Wall Street Journal and other voices of the 1% keep telling us that the real aim of an economic activity is to get as much cash as possible, as much liquid assets as you can, and so that you can shift that money elsewhere and invest it to make a profit as far as you can. So they tell you to, that's what they tell you to do, and those attitudes I think have been what's been responsible for the economic meltdown we've been seeing recently. There's been the economic meltdown in the headlines, and even more than that, there's the fact that most people's standard of living is going down, and the 99% are seeing less and less benefits from the economy. So we had this economic meltdown when people have been pushing for when the 1% have been trying to pursue their vision of the liquidity economy. We want to go back to the solidarity economy. One of the things we've been doing in our, that's a big task, and Occupy is not going to do it alone. What we're trying to do is, first of all, work with what's already there. There are a lot of people who do, in Providence, in Rhode Island, who do economic activity in ways that are really socially responsible, that isn't just out to make profit for yourself, but actually cares about the community and about the future of other people. And some of those are socially responsible businesses that we hear about. Some of them are not even businesses, like Recycle a Bike, for instance, or not even a traditional kind of business. And what we've been doing is we've been making maps. We've been making maps of where you can find these kinds of solidarity economy sites where people are really trying to build a more cooperative model for the future. And we're encouraging people to patronize these places, to take part in that kind of activity, because it's not just the burden of the people who run, say, a store to be socially responsible, it's also a burden on us. We have to just not buy wherever we can buy things the cheapest. We have to be careful that we try to patronize things that will actually make the situation better. So we are making a directory of solidarity economy sites in Providence and in surrounding areas. And we also have some much more ambitious plans about how we can use the people power, the large number of people involved in Occupy and the people supporting Occupy to use that strength in numbers to actually nurture the solidarity economy on a much bigger scale in a more self-sustaining way. That's more ambitious, and we're only in the very exploratory stages of that. But we do want to start out by getting people involved in the solidarity economy sites that already exist.
Today we'll talk about gender economic inequality.
We're holding questions and comments.
Hi, my name is Jim, and one of the campaigns that Occupy Providence is working on is on gender economic inequality. And one of the questions that some people might have is, well, why are we talking about gender equality? I thought that was something that got solved back in the 60s. But it's really something that there's still very much is a very big difference between what women make for compared to what men make for the same jobs, especially when minorities are factored in, and so gender equality doesn't end with a past legislation. Progress has been made, strides have been made, but change still needs to come, and we still need to fight for that change, and we still need to bring awareness to the fact that there still is this gender role and gender binary that exists in our society that people are expected to fall into and fall under, and that's so present in our economic market these days, you know, with what type of jobs are women expected to have, you know, what type of, how are they expected to perform themselves at this job, you know, I mean, there's this idea where, you know, if there's a woman who, that a woman should be a waitress, and if she's a waitress, she should be flirty, because that helps attract customers and gets good tips, and so that's something that really needs to be addressed as being sexism still blatant and obvious in this country. And, you know, and as for what Occupy Providence is doing about that, well, we've been having meetings trying to discuss, you know, what exactly the how gender identity factors into today's world, into today's economic market. And what we really pulled out of this is that, you know, we feel a little bit awkward stating that, you know, this is somebody who you should feel oppressed by, and this is somebody who you should march against, and this is somebody who is holding you back. Because it's not an issue of somebody holding you back, it's an issue of you holding somebody accountable. And so what we're going to be trying to organize is a day or possibly even several days in the park in which we reach out to the community of Providence and anybody who's willing to come and ask them what makes you feel oppressed in Providence, what makes you want to have a voice, what makes you want, how can we help you find the power that you know that you have, and how can we help you support that on that path. And as for who can be involved with this type of an action, well, obviously, gender roles isn't exactly a big issue. You know, it's anybody who has a voice. You know, the thing about gender roles is that it creates a binary that it doesn't just affect women, it affects everybody. And so everybody needs to be involved. You know, how and how we can solve this problem of not just having you know, it's the same issue of class warfare. You know, you're talking about people who feel that there's a class that they're born into and that they can't get out of, and that the economic market actually has trouble allowing them to get out of. Well, it's the same thing about what we want to change culturally for gender identity. It's the idea that you're born into a certain culture, and these are the jobs that are offered to you, and this is how you must perform yourself. And you know, and so we really just want to destroy the idea that what you're born into is what you are, because there's something called being an individual, and that's something we're all capable of, despite gender. Thank you.
Martha Yeager will be talking about civil rights.
So civil rights is a huge piece of work that is part of dealing with the oppressions that are very much alive and well in the 99% as well as with the 1%. And there are lots of, how do we do this work together in this community at this time? And there are lots of handles we can grab onto. As Randall said, there are some folks who are willing to do legislative work, and there are others who want to put their energies in other directions, and that's fine. But two handles that are in front of us that different groups in the community have asked for the support from Occupy on are racial profiling and Ban the Box campaign, which are two pieces of legislation that actually do some useful things. And it's an opportunity to kind of challenge our legislators to listen to the people. And if they don't, make them pay. Make it really obvious if they're not listening to the people. But in order for that to work, the people have to speak. So the two pieces of legislation are the bill to curtail racial profiling, which has been attempted for many years. The current effort is very much being led by people of color from our community, and they're asking for ally support in talking about what kind of community we want to live in. I don't want to live in a community in which my friends with darker skin get stopped by the cops for doing nothing. When kids I work with, that I really love and respect get stopped just for walking down the street. That's wrong. I don't want to live in a place like that. And the challenge has been that the cops don't like the bill. They say it will tie their hands, and yet at the same time they admit that this is exactly what they teach their officers in the academy, and some of them even acknowledge that it's just codifying best practices. And yet they don't want it in law. And guess what? Every legislator has at least one police chief in their district, and guess who they listen to? So they need to hear from us. They need to hear from you. They're tired of hearing from me. We all live in different state congressional and senatorial districts, and the reality is that people of color live in very limited, by and large, live in fairly limited congressional districts. So as active as they may be, they're not necessarily talking to your legislator or my legislator. So that's our goal. The other one is the Ban the Box campaign, which when you apply for a job, you're asked, especially on those entry-level jobs, you're asked whether you've ever been convicted of anything. And guess what? If you check that box, it goes straight to the trash. You will never get an interview. And so the campaign is to ban that on the initial application. People can ask about it later. It creates an opportunity to at least get to the interview stage that other people don't have. So those are the two sort of nearby handles. There are lots of other things that people want to work on down the road, but those are handles we've got right now.
You don't even have to cut that, but you do need a piece of paper. If you look to the back of the service, you'll see a song. Oh, there is one more thing first.
You have one more announcement.
One more announcement. It must be a Unitarian gathering.
It's working? Awesome. Hi, I'm Jay. I coordinated the People's Art and Culture Center at the Occupation. And I just want to let you guys know that in league with all these campaigns, we have another thing that's happening in the spring, summer. It's the Occupy Film Festival. And we definitely need lots of hands on deck for this because it actually turned out to be a lot more complex than we thought it would be. And it's a lot of fun to do. It's like, it's like, not that campaigns aren't fun, but what we're doing is trying to coordinate it so that we can get regular people to illustrate why these exact movements are necessary in their own words and without our having to be like, racism or sexism is important now. Why is it important? Tell me now. They just come out and tell you. And so we need coordinators and people to help us facilitate different things like sponsorship, venues, coordinate the ranking of the variable short films as they come in. And so if you're interested at all, just I can give you my email address or you can give me yours and I can include you on the list when we send out our information. And we have regular meetings. Basically, the People's Art and Culture Center is a 24-hour day working group. And so we're always working on these projects. And so if you want to or need to get in contact with us along a certain channels, you can always get in contact with us. And so, yeah, thank you. It's great to be here with all of you and see you all here. It's very inspiring. Thanks.
When I was installed as minister here, and I was talking with the leadership about what music was particularly appropriate, what spoke to our heart as a community here, it turned out the song I wanted us to sing and the song they wanted us to sing for the conclusion of that service was "We'll Build the Land." Claire will play it through once and give it some gusto.
Free, with oil,
is to extinguish that chalice at the end. Trying to remember, however, that that flame which was a symbol of the flame carried in each of our hearts. That chalice that held it was this community that we have created and which goes on even as we break up and go on to the next parts of our lives. Nourished by each other's presence, learning from each other, inspired. God, I'm so inspired by each other. We can go forth and maybe do a little good in this world. So, until we gather again, friends, may we part in peace and with just a hint of unrest. Amen.